And we're off. So this is Super Princess Peach any percent. This is the primary category that is run of this game. It is admittedly, on the long run, as you can see, my final split is 2 hours, 12 minutes, 56 seconds. But boy, is it packed with a lot of toads, a lot of movement, a lot of quick reaction time, so we'll be keeping it interesting the whole way through. So you'll notice, like I said, a lot of toads. There's a toad right there. Why are we saving that toad, you might be asking? Well, boy, let me tell you one interesting thing about this game. If you get... All you have to do to unlock the following stage at any point is beat the previous stage. Until you get to the final boss, and suddenly it says, we cannot open the final stage until you save all the toads. Real quick side note here before I go on. We need to get a lot of money at the very beginning of the run, specifically 250 coins. So this first goalpost, if you turn on your crying, you basically are guaranteed to get that star, which actually turned into a 777 Peach. So we got good RNG in this run and got bonus money, so we might actually be able to buy some stuff from the shop early. You'll see that happening as we go along. But anyways, I was saying earlier, you need to save all the toads, but nowhere in-game prior to getting to the final boss does it even tell you. And most people these days, if you're going to play this game, you probably buy it used and you just get the cartridge. But if you did buy it new or happened to get the game manual along with the game, you'd be lucky enough to read, at least have the game manual, and you could read it says in there, guess what, in order to access the final boss, you better save all the toads. So just be wary if you're ever playing a casual run of this. Even though the toads look so easily skippable and the game seems to progress without them, you better be getting them. So actually moving on to movement in this game, as you've seen, this has two screens. I got one in the bottom left corner and one on the big screen. And that is because we're playing on the DS, which is very much known for its dual screens, one being a touch screen. The touch screen is primarily used for your vibes or your emotion things, such as right now we're using Gloom Vibe. This is probably the one we end up using the most. It's good for running at the highest speeds. It is like the fastest accessible movement tied with sliding down slopes. So we will be using that a lot whenever we have the vibe meter to use it. So that one's blue, which is Gloom. Yellow is Joy Vibe. We use that for flight, and that helps us in a lot of vertical rooms, which there are plenty of rooms that just need to go straight up, and rather than dealing with all the platforming, we're just going to fly right past it all. So we'll get to see those rooms every here and there. The next most used Gloom is the red one, Rage, which literally just sets Peach on fire, and she gets angry and gets pretty darn invincible. And we mostly use that for the sake of puzzle solving. Here's some Joy, by the way. You see we fly to get up above this paratrooper to get up to a toad. And real quick, we're going to actually, rather than go forward to exit the pipe the standard way, we're just going to backtrack and just go out the way we came in, just because it ends up being a little quicker. But yeah, so that Rage Vibe is not going to be used so much for movement as it is just like accessing things. So there's that, and the fourth vibe is Calm Vibe, which gets used. It doesn't need to ever be used in the run for like movement or puzzle solving reasons. Here's an example of a puzzle to solve. You go into Joy Vibe to whirl away the cloud. There are hint boxes that tell you how to do things like that, so thanks for the you go, bro. But yeah, so as I was saying with the Calm Vibe, it's not used at any point in the speedrun necessarily, but if you're ever low on health, you can turn that on to gain some health back. In this room, we have another like route switched, like a routing to guarantee money. You can get those 30 coins from the flower pretty consistently if you use the Gloom Vibe and jump into the water with the timing I just did there. Sometimes you might get a mushroom, which is only worth 10 coins instead of the 30 from the flower. But for the most part, as long as you get some money, we're all set. So another thing to point out about the Gloom Vibe, you'll notice whenever I use it, even when I'm running across a flat surface, there's a whole lot of hopping going on. The reason for that is you see below our health in the top left corner, there's a yellow meter. That's our vibe gauge, which if you ever run out of that, you can't use any of your vibes. Interestingly, whenever you're using the Gloom Vibe, it drains slower either when you're standing still or when you're in the air. Like it almost seems to drain at a non-existent speed. So next time I end up using it, keep an eye on how fast the meter's draining whenever I'm in the air or standing still, and you'll notice it drains much slower than when I'm just running flat on the ground. So that's why we end up jumping as much as possible. You'll notice you're picking up enemies with your parasol. Your parasol's name is Perry, by the way. It's got an interesting backstory. I might go into that at some point during this run. But yeah, you can pick up enemies and items with Perry, as well as get a whack at enemies as well. But the other thing you can do is, if you're ever low on vibe, one of the main ways to get it back is you have Perry straight up eat the enemies, and it fills up your vibe meter. Interesting little movement I'm going to call out here. There's a trampoline we're about to jump off of, which leads to some floating platforms that normally you're expected to just kind of wait for to get around, but we're just going to skip a couple platforms, joy up to this last one, and then to finish off the stage we've got these slopes. Like I mentioned, the horizontal speed we're moving with while going across those slopes is the exact same speed that we get whenever we're running with Gloom, and both of those are tied for the fastest standard accessible speed. There's probably a few exceptions here or there where you might gain some extra speed, but yeah. Sliding down a slope conserves vibe, but obviously you can only do that where there is a slope. If there's a flat surface and you want to go fast, you're kind of stuck using the Gloom. Interesting little movement here. We're going to turn on that Gloom vibe and jump at the precise time to bounce off of that Bob-omb and just land right on this pipe. Just nice, smooth access. Not too difficult, but it looks really cool when you pull it off. Here's an example of using Rage Vibe to solve a puzzle. I use puzzle lightly, but you burn a bridge, and for some reason the Koopa shell doesn't understand that wooden bridge is floor, so it just falls through. But to save on a little bit of movement, you see we intentionally throw the Koopa shell down there so we can use it to save the Toad from a distance and get moving towards that exit pipe faster. Little puzzle section here, which with the power of Google I've noticed has stumped a few people somehow. It could be, I don't know. After you do something so many times, you kind of forget how tricky it might be. There's actually one room that I can see where people get hung up in. But the deal is, you see the colors of the mushrooms, and you have to hit the flowers in the same order. In this room, you can one cycle. You don't have to wait for the Ferris wheel to do like one fullish rotation. If you miss one, you have to wait for it to go all the way around. But here, this last room is very strange. It's much larger, but you still have to hit the flowers in the right order. But there are these moving platforms on both sides that, like, very slowly screech to a stop at their highest and lowest points, and honestly, waiting for them is abysmal and miserable, and, like, even at the highest height the platform gets to, you have to be really careful with your jump to make sure you make it up to the top. So it's much easier to just come into this room with enough vibe to just, as you can see here, I'm just going to say, forget these platforms, I'm going to just fly up, just like that. And here you see you hit the last flower of the puzzle, unlocks this pipe, and I believe I should be eating this Bob-omb here. Om nom nom. Get a little bit of vibe back. You actually hear a little ticking as it goes up. And so, yeah, with that, we are heading towards the end of this stage, which is also the end of World 1. Currently, my money's at 951. Because I got that bonus 777 money at the very start, I am going to be waiting to spend money until I have 950 coins, which I actually just got in this stage. So, actually I need 200 coins, not 250, I apologize for that miscalculation. But because of that, like, what you use the money for is you buy a couple of power-ups in the shop. The first one we usually buy is Float Umbrella, which is, like, the standard, like, power-up that umbrellas usually come with by default when they're in a game, which is being able to float in the air. But then we're also going to buy 2 Vibe Teas, which what they're going to do is make our vibe meter be a little bigger, which is going to come in really handy for a couple of stages where if you're not careful, you just might run out faster. So with every boss fight, before it you play a little mini game. In this case, we're like using the touchscreen in the bottom to like drag these little bungee trampolines to launch Peach up into the goal ring. It's possible to skip this last trampoline and jump from the bottom one all the way up. I did not get the jump at full height, so we just had to get that extra jump in. Not a huge deal, but we like to get that extra trampoline skip if possible. Now this person might look a little familiar to you, as maybe some previous enemies have. This game, when it comes to enemies, just brings them in from Mario games from all around. So PD Piranha from Sunshine shows up here. We'll see plenty of others. I'll try to call some of them out that might be from, you know, slightly less common. Like, we've seen Goombas. Everyone knows what a Goomba is. But there's a few more niche enemies that tend to pop up here and there. But Same idea as in Sunshine here, Super Mario Sunshine. We're just going to be using water, in this case the Gloom Vibe, to fill up Petey's belly, and then boop him on the belly button. And you see him actually doing intentional, taking intentional damage here. The deal with that is anytime you turn a vibe on or off, you see the game kind of freezes for a second. If you take damage, that little freeze frame that happens gets skipped. So we intentionally take damage to move the game just a tiny bit faster to save some time. So once again, I fill Petey's belly up, take damage, and then jump on him, and he's dead. And as you can see, like every other stage, there's a Toad. In this case, only one in the boss instead of the 3 in most stages. But that is World 1 of Super Princess Peach Any %. So moving along, we just skipped a cutscene there. I might mention it later. Here's the shop visit, by the way. So because we have enough money for the single shop visit one time, I'm having a little bit of menuing trouble, but we're going to buy the float brella. Lets us float in the air a little bit and make longer jumps, essentially. And then we're going to get these 2 Vibe Teas, as Perry describes for us. It is made from Vibe Crystals. It'll extend your Vibe Gauge. So woohoo, we have a extended Vibe Gauge now. Good for being able to use more Vibe longer. Interestingly, we usually don't get those Vibe Teas until World 4. So there are a few places here and there where, like, if you get those, that 777, like that big money in the first stage, you might be able to save a little bit of time in these early stages because you can use some extra Vibe. Here, whenever whacking with Perry, as you can see, Perry doesn't care about walls. The hit detection passes through walls, so we're able to just save that Toad through a wall rather than like jumping around to where he's hiding, nestled in there. And yep, use a combination of Gloom and Joy there to run and then fly to that pipe. And as I mentioned before, there's that freeze frame whenever turning vibes on and off. It's also there when transitioning from one vibe to another. So rather than taking the time to, you know, go from Gloom to normal to Joy, you can save a little time by transitioning straight from one vibe into another. So whenever we like want to use 2 vibes back to back, it might end up wasting a little bit of vibe meter to like go straight from one to another instead of turning them off for a little bit. But if we can possibly use one back to back into the other, we do that to save a little bit of time. And coming up here, this is a very unique Toad, at least unique in World 2. There's a couple like this throughout the game. But it is completely blocking our path. There is no way to skip this Toad. So there's actually an alternate category that some people run every now and then in this game called Low Toad, where we try to save as few Toads as possible just to kind of get through the game a little bit faster and see all the stages. But yeah, when it comes to getting as few Toads as possible, that Toad is completely unskippable. So there's no way for you... Well, you also get Toads from bosses, but on top of the Toad bosses, there's a few others that you're just guaranteed to get because the game absolutely refuses to let you skip them. At least until we find any sort of special out-of-bounds tricks, but nothing like that has been found yet. So we got an auto-scroller here, nothing too special, just to kind of waste time. You know, you can throw enemies around. Interestingly, if you make 2 enemies collide like that, a plethora of items and coins might come out. So it's just like a little thing to kind of practice your aim and timing. But honestly, there's not too much interesting going on here. We're just waiting for the screen to head right. So we'll just kind of stick around while that happens. Not much too left. Not too much left of it though, excuse me. And there's our exit pipe. So as I mentioned, slopes and Gloom are like tied for the fastest speed. This is a room that has a lot of slopes though, so we could potentially Gloom through the whole thing and it gives us more or less invincibility. But if you do that, you end up wasting Vibe. So it's like a balance of, do I want to slide through this to save Vibe, or do I want the protections? And I opt to typically use the slope jumping just for the sake of conserving Vibe for later parts. And here's an example. Usually I just slowly run through this room. Because I have that extra Vibe meter, though, I'm going to go ahead. I'm just using the Gloom here just to go a little faster, save some time in this room. So a nice little thing there. Coming up on another puzzle that Gloom solves here. Little water wheel. So if it's a water wheel, what do you need? Water. So we will be using Gloom to spin the water wheel, and you'll see a little note. Here it comes. You can actually, like, jump away before the water wheel finishes so we can kind of get a head start of where we're going, but loud noise was heard from somewhere. So there was this like pipe barely sticking out of the ground back here, and now it's open so we can go in. And I'm low on vibe, so definitely going to eat that Koopa, because if not I couldn't burn this bridge. Hey Pickley, how's it going? And that's Toad number 2 of this stage, which we better find that third Toad soon because there's only one screen left. But not to worry. At this point, I've done this run enough times that I've yet to like straight up miss a Toad in a run. I'm not going to say that's never going to happen, but at least recently has yet to happen, so yeah. Still don't know where all the Toads are. There's actually a lot of rooms we end up not visiting because they're like different paths through the stages, especially later on in the game. The game seems to become a little bit more of a labyrinth. Gets a little more tricky, like giving you multiple options of how to get through a stage. But like a lot of times, only one of them has the Toads and the other one gets completely skipped. As you can see, plenty more gloom, plenty more joy happening. Not too much rage, still no sign of the calm vibe. I forget, I might have actually ended up having to resort to it to avoid death. We'll see if that, if so, I'll mention it. If not, I'll kind of talk about it later. Like, I'll just bring it up sometime. And it's nice how we can, like, sneak in before that Raven, like, climbs up the wall and bounce off of him to save a little bit of vibe. And as I mentioned, this game likes having enemies from all over the place. We got some Ravens from, I believe, Yoshi's Island, or the Yoshi game series. They make an appearance in this game. This can be easy to miss location because it's down below, but you see the water wheel has the little cutscene after I even leave it, so it's like the task, I believe, of this is the cutscene doesn't happen until after coming out of this pipe, so you can actually get a decent ways away from that if you time it perfectly, but unfortunately it's not something that's too easy to get that precise. But yeah, so these first 2 rooms of this stage, a lot of back and forth. We're basically visiting the second sub-room off of the first screen of this stage. And we have to fight against the wind, which really kind of hinders all of our speed. So it's not really too worth it to slide down slopes. Bonsai Bill's really getting your way. If you get lucky, you can just ride this wind full speed off of a slope, and unfortunately I didn't quite get a good movement there, but a lot of times Bonsai Bills can just crash in your way as well. But yeah, after that, finally we get to move on in this stage. Heading on forward. And you'll notice a lot of the enemies have multiple forms. And I'll try to point them out as we see them. Well, I'm bringing that up now because I saw there were those red Goombas. Also, hi Double, how's it going? But yeah, much like the fact that Peach has the different emotions she can use in her attacks, that's actually a red Paratroopa as well. There are different enemies that are affected by different emotions as well. So we've just seen some rage or angry Goombas and Paratroopas. They tend to just dash faster. We're going to see some sad Goombas that like just have a huge running speed. Windmill there, so another puzzle to solve. Using the tornado that happens when you don't fly upward with Joy just to spin the windmill. And finishing out in gloom. But yeah, there's also the calm version for enemies, since they can't really heal, since it's either they're alive or you squashed them, is they're asleep. And you can try to sneak past them and ignore them, or you can just wake them up and fight them like normal. Fortunately, another auto-scroller here. The interesting thing about auto-scrollers, thanks for the host, Double. As much as you think you can kind of look away, you really can't. A few of my first runs, I tried to I would just look away or something, and I accidentally see myself falling off this ladder. And if you fall down to the bottom, the auto scroller resets, and you don't want to have to deal with that because that's just a huge time loss. And also, you can't just hug the top of the screen because that last sad Paratroopa who's crying and floating, which there's another sad or emotion enemy, it actually appears right at the ladder. So if you just kind of climb up the ladder at full speed, you will crash into it, and then the knockback could possibly knock you to your doom. So you gotta watch out there. You can see how fast the meter was draining there, how much I have left, because I wasn't able to jump. If I jumped, I would have taken damage and then lost all my speed. You need the full speed of Gloom in order to get across there. This is actually a new strat we've been having it here, or added here. The Piranha Plant spits you out at a really high speed. It avoids you needing to use slopes or Gloom, and if the fish treats you nicely, which unfortunately I got a little messed with this time, you can just zoom through that entire room at really nice speed. Bats don't like fire, obviously. That's not really that obvious, I'll be honest. But if you read the little hint box there, it'll say why not scare them away with fire or something like that. So that's how you're supposed to know to do that. This game, admittedly, like, tries to make itself very friendly and easy to play. Like, they give you hints every step of the way. Like, I believe there's little hint blocks up even through the last, possibly the last stage of the game, and almost every stage in between. So they try to give you tips along the way just so you don't get confused. Unfortunately, like, when some people play, they might just feel a little too tired of hitting them, and then they end up not reading some tips and they don't know how to solve a puzzle. Which some puzzles are more obvious than others, like spinning a windmill, use wind, spinning a water wheel, use water. Scaring bats, I mean, I feel like process of elimination you might end up getting to rage, but it's not, like, as obvious. Interesting little strat here. If you jump off a trampoline with Gloom, which I accidentally screwed up, you get a lot of extra height, so I actually had to use the backup here. Because I wasn't able to get the height off the trampoline, instead I just simply flew up to the top, which is a little slower, but overall it gets you to the end fast enough to not feel like it's ruining your run. So we march forward into what is actually the last stage of World 2, besides the boss. And this one starts with a unique strat that is only featured on this stage, and that is we quit. We straight up just quit. And I'll show you what I mean in a little bit here. We're going to use Gloom, and real quick you can see when I'm in the air, the meter is like barely falling. Every little time I touch the ground for a split second, you can see it starts to zoom down really fast. But yeah, I'm going to save this toad, and one of the ways this game is very friendly to you is it saves all the time. It saves when you beat a stage, it saves when you beat a toad, so you see that toad we saved is still saved in the top right corner. So it saves when you beat a stage, saves... You can even, like, suspend the game mid-stage. I bet it even saves when it hears you sneeze, because that's what the microphone's for, probably. But anyway, so because of that, in that one room, because it's such a long hallway, rather than redoing it, we just exit the stage and go back in. The jump you just saw there, I used to get up to this toad, is surprisingly precise. If you jump too late, you'll bop into the hint box. If you jump too early, you just won't make it the jump. But you need to be in Gloom at full speed to jump up to on top of that hint box to get above the toad. And once, like, one thing with that windmill, similar to the water wheel, I turn off the Gloom before the gate opens just to kind of save a little bit of time and get myself closer to where I'm trying to get. You don't always have to sit by the wheels when they open, essentially. A couple of paratroopers that passed by here. Those are actually some happy or joyous piranha plants you saw, and they were jumping up in the air instead of staying neutral on the ground. If I didn't eat that Paragoomba, it would have dashed at me. So just kind of continuously pointing out those enemies because they're fun to see. And here you can see how much extra height you get off the trampoline. I'm even hitting my head on the ceiling because of the extra speed I have from using Gloom while bouncing off the trampoline. And there, I got a single coin. Fortunately, at this point, coins do not matter because I have plenty from that 7 peach at the very start. I hinted at this before, but every boss fight has a touchscreen minigame before it. So this is the second one. First we had trampolines. Now we're using this log. What I'm doing, obviously you can't see the stylus because that's in real life and this is the screen itself, is I'm just sort of spinning it in circles on the log in a clockwise direction, and that's what makes it go up. So the timing of these spears is unfortunate that you have to, like, even at full speed, you'll crash into one if you don't wait for them. So I basically have to wait every single time. And if you get hit by any of these spears, it resets the entire minigame, so you really don't want to get hit. Alright, next up here, we have what I believe is a unique character to this game, which is Who, which is the boss of Who's Woods, the name of this world. There was a specific timing there that I jumped in the air because it made those eggs spawn as I was above Who, so that I can bounce off of them and stay up high and have the and be able to just beat this fight sooner. Because I had the extra vibe, I actually saved a little bit of time getting that third hit. If I didn't have the extra vibe, I would have had to wait for Who to swoop down, because I need Joy vibe in order to get above Who for this second phase in order to do damage. And you see, I just barely have enough vibe to stay above to get those last 2 hits in. And you'll notice a theme with all the boss fights. They all have 2 phases. PD stood in, was completely stagnant at first, and then went down to 2 health, started jumping left and right. Who just completely tears out the bottom platform for phase 2. And every time with phase 2, you see the enemy inhabit one of the emotions. So PD got angry. Who went into joy, and that's what the tornado and just more flying. It's a little more subtle, not as obvious in that case, but it's paralleling Peach's joy vibe, so I'm guessing that's what's going on there. These blocks you can throw items at. You're gonna be heading off? Alright, that's fine, double. If it's 1 a.m. for you, I do not blame you. But yeah, so projectiles can hit those switches, or you can whack them yourself with parry. Up to you, depending on the situation. But yeah, so now we're in the Haunted Mansion, the Boo House. So we'll be seeing plenty of boos here. And boy, is that fun. And this is where the game can start getting a little bit labyrinthy, because it wants to be, all confusing and spooky and stuff. So with the first 2 toads, you saw there's that giant first room that you're sort of slowly scaling up. We're about to go back into it one more time. And there's actually a total of 4 doors. 2 lead to dead ends with toads, and the last 2 lead to moving forward. But also one of those 2 leads you to a toad, while the other one just would completely avoid the toad. So if we didn't fly up to this door, we could have very easily missed a toad. But fortunately, it's here waiting for us, so we save it. And now we just have a few more screens to get past to finish. This next room actually has some slightly specific movement to it. You have to move fast enough to catch some moving platforms and get a fast cycle with them. So you need to make sure to hit this dry bones without getting stuck on it, taking damage, getting knocked back, whatever. So that when you get to these platforms, you can jump straight onto the second one, and then to the last one, and then you get to this pipe. And here is one of 2 upgrades we get from in-stage, and it is Slide Brella. So parry is Peach's main weapon, main utility item the entire time. So now, because of course umbrellas can commonly be used as zip lines, we just turn parry upside down, hop inside the umbrella part, or whatever you call the top of the umbrella, and use the cane side as a hook to hang on. And that gets us to the end. So I can talk about these goal rings actually a little bit while we get into the next stage. As you see, they're spinning around, and they have different, prizes that you can get. There's the vegetable from Super Mario Bros. 2, nice little reference they snuck in there. There's mushroom, there's flower, and there is star. And depending on what you get in the goal ring, you get a certain amount of money. So vegetable only gives you 1 because no one eats their veggies and veggies are sad. Mushroom is 10 because it's a nice standard number, I guess. Flower sounds a little more bonusy, so they give you 30, and a star gives you 50. But also along with the star giving you 50, there is a small chance it's not quite frame perfect, and it's also not something you can really plan for, at least as far as our research has shown. Sometimes there can be a 2-frame window for it. I think I've noticed a 1-frame window sometimes, but it's there's a chance that when you hit the star, it can turn into a peach like it did for me in World 1-1 and give you 777 coins instead of just 50. And you hope to get that early on so you can save time from visiting a shop. And that just also gives you your extra vibe power-up early, which actually, I should mention that. So because I did all my shopping early, I don't have to revisit the shop later. That also means I spent more time in the shop early. And you'll notice my timer says I'm 30 seconds behind, which I might be behind right now, compared to my regular pace. But even if I am, it's nowhere near as significant as the timer suggests, because later on in the run, my current PB will have to visit the shop and purchase those 2 vibe upgrades that I didn't have the money for in my PB. And when that happens, that'll be something that this current run won't have to do, and that will sort of equalize the 2 runs. So a lot of times, if like your PB has the 777 Peach, or your current run has it and your PB doesn't, you kind of run into this issue where when compared to your PB for like the first 3 worlds, you're strangely 30 seconds ahead or 30 seconds behind when you feel like you're just on your normal pace. So that's just something interesting to be aware of that this run offers. And it can kind of make early parts of the game a little unclear on am I ahead or behind sometimes. Is there a difference when killing an enemy with a scoop or a hit? A non-scoop, oh. So, as far as I can tell with that, Pickley, my understanding is no. So what Pickley's mentioning when he says there a difference, when they say is there a difference when killing an enemy with a scoop or a hit? As you've noticed, I'm able to pick up some enemies and then eat them to absorb vibe. There are some enemies that for whatever reason the programmers decided you cannot pick up. So if you try to scoop them up, they just sort of react as if they died. So visually to them, nothing different happens. Actually, there is a slight advantage to you potentially, I believe, and that is a lot of times when you whack, I feel like there might be a potential chance of, well, maybe not knockback, but I feel like you might, I don't know, there might not be anything. I'm trying to think if anything about the environment could be affected with you whacking or like anything like that, but probably for the most part, it's something very minor, if anything. A unique room here. I used to always stream at 30 FPS, and more recently I've done some of my streams in 60 FPS. So this spotlight actually flickers at like 1 frame per, like 1 frame per flicker. So whenever I streamed at 30 FPS, this would either just be a solid beam or completely off, and it would be kind of unclear what the heck I was doing in that room. But you basically just have to wait for that boo to come to the left side of the screen, get hit by the spotlight, and then he becomes a platform to either jump off of. And Pickley, yeah, landing lag might be affected by it, you're right. So like, whenever you use an attack and you're in the air, when you land, if you haven't finished the animation yet, you might freeze in place to finish it off. The hitbox of scooping versus whacking also might be a little different. But any differences are probably minor enough that it won't significantly affect a run at the moment, I wouldn't think. But yeah, the fact that some enemies are non-scoopable actually comes into play with some boss fights. With the previous Who fight, I mentioned that sometimes we have to wait for Who to like dive down at you. You can either choose to whack Who, or because I guess the game identifies Who as a non-scoopable enemy, because non-scoopable enemies just act as if they take damage, it actually damages Who. So it's like you're basically poking Who in the face. And I think there might have been, if you whacked, there might have been knockback, but scooping does not have knockback. So maybe in boss fights there is an effect there. So yeah, this zip line, I passed probably what I think is the scariest part of it, but there are some times where if you're not careful, you just like jump too far and there's like a really tiny space that you have to land and then pull off another jump really quickly. And if you're not fast enough, you just fall to your doom. And I've had multiple runs where like I'll make that mistake and then I end up, you reset the room if you fall, and then I just jump the exact same way. Basically I copy paste my muscle memory and do the exact same thing a second time. This is a set of puzzle doors right now. Fortunately, it never changes. So we always just go middle, right, 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 left. And it gets us to the end. And if you pick a wrong door, it basically kicks you out and you have to do the puzzle all over again. So, admittedly, it might be a little hard to see in here. That's because this is a foggy room. If we use the tornado from Joy Vibe, it would clear up the fog. But we can see well enough that rather than doing that, we're going to use the free vibe crystals the room gives us to just gloom across the room just to make it go by faster. There used to be times before I streamed with a capture card where you would see that room and I was just pointing a camera at my DS screen and it was just unclear what the heck was going on. I was just going through and just had to take my word for it. So those platforms I just jumped off of, they disintegrate. The deal with them is if you are walking slowly, they will not disintegrate. So if you hold R or L, Peach will walk instead of run when moving. And usually whenever I jump off of them, I hold R or L just to make sure the disintegrating doesn't make me fall. But if you jump shortly after landing, you will be able to maintain your horizontal momentum. So if you jump too late, like the game will notice you're walking, and then if you jump again, you'll be at walking speed. This stage, I mentioned trampolines and Gloom giving you super height. These are big trampolines. You're able to actually skip some trampolines sometimes. You can even skip to that one. Unfortunately, I did not get enough height. But either way, we can still use this massive height to get up to this toad that you're normally intended to drop down to after scaling the room. But because we're able to gain that extra height with Gloom combined with trampolines, that's a nice little bit of movement we're able to skip on there. And then once we're done getting the toad, we just kind of cruise up here normally. Ooh, this next room coming up, I'm going to be able to showcase one little bit of optimized movement that we're going to be able to do because we have the extra vibe meter early. And that is using a little bit of extra Gloom that we usually don't do and leaving some Rage on. So I think usually in any run, we'll go from Rage straight to Gloom here and then back to Rage. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to leave it on and just fall with it on rather than turning it off and then back on. In the if I hadn't purchased those extra vibe teas early, I would have had to turn on that third torch, turn off Rage, fall, then turn Rage back on, and that would have been noticeably slower and a lot more stop-go. So just a minor optimization we get to observe there. Now this room is a little bit awkward because there's some nice slopes early on to gain some momentum off of, but then there's just like walls and blocks everywhere, and there's just no convenient way to just easily get some speed. Like even that little party ball thing gets in your way too. So it's just a rough room to run through very smoothly. And we want to get through these blocks. If we stopped and whacked all these, it would have been stop and go, because anytime you whack on the ground, you stop in place, and every time I jumped anyway, I would have had to crash into blocks. We drop down here. There's a bunch of doors. Most of them reset you to the beginning of the room, but this one door to the right of the heart, there's a convenient visual cue there, leads us to this toad in the bottom left corner of the room. And we used to go to the top of the room and just run across the platforms along the top, but as long as you have enough vibe, you can just fly up here instead, which is much quicker. And actually, this dark room, if you turn on your Rage, it acts as you being a personal lantern, and it just lights it up a little bit. Once again, not necessary, because we can see well enough. But this next room is an interesting gravity room that rotates 90 degrees when you hit these boxes, but a newly adapted strat as people have messed around with vibe. We used to just kind of run through this normal, walking, boring, and slow, but we can use Gloom to run through it much faster. So nice to see that as more people try to run this game, people come up with different ideas. Well, what if you try to use Gloom here and stuff like that? So this game is very much a living speed game in that finalized strats are not set in stone. New optimized movements are being found on a regular basis. As more runners come in, like, I encourage them to try their own things. Like, yes, if you want an initial route to start off of, maybe look at some people's PBs on the leaderboards, but try out your own things. And sometimes I even try to mess around with things and I find new strats, and it's just it's a process. And it's kind of cool, since I've been with speedrunning this game since it started being speedrun for the most part, seeing how different people's ideas influence how movement works throughout the game. Can you control how high you go off of the trampolines? Yes, Pickley. So the way those trampolines work is it sort of uses your horizontal movement to influence your vertical movement. So if you're running at full speed in Gloom, you'll get your fullest height. Actually, I want to talk about this boss fight real quick, then go back to trampolines. This is King Boo. You might recognize him from many things. My mind always goes to Sunshine, just because I've seen Super Mario Sunshine speedruns where people complain about RNG affecting this boss fight. RNG affects this King Boo boss fight too, in that there are 4 torches, and with every hit, 1 more torch is not lit, and it's always random which one. So the first time only 1 torch was not lit. In this case, it was top left, which was second fastest. And then because I had to go to the farthest top one, I had a pretty slow second hit. Fortunately, my last torch I lit here on the third time around was a bottom torch, so I got the fastest thing there. But from here on out, the last 2 hits, phase 2, so now King Boo is crying, so he can put out the torches. But also, all 4 torches are always not lit, so the RNG is gone. But basically, you always want to hope for, like, the first one is bottom left, and then the second one is both left, and the third one is the 2 on the left and then bottom right. And that would be optimal, but that hardly ever happens. So you can just gain and lose a lot of time on this just by RNG alone. And a lot of boss fights actually have that RNG influence. PD Piranha, not so much. Who can be if you're low on vibe and you get unlucky with some vibe crystal drops. King Boo, straight up the entire fight is RNG. Well, the first 3 hits are RNG. But yeah, going back to trampolines, like I was saying, Pickley, the horizontal movement is what impacts your vertical movement. So if you like start to build up speed but don't get to full speed in Gloom, you'll get like a more medium height. If you stand still and jump, you'll get probably your lowest height. If you're running but not in Gloom, you'll get, you know, some lower height. And stuff like that. So, and then moving on now to Volcano World. I was about to say Grumble Volcano, but I think that's a Mario Kart stage. But here, we got some big red switches start to appear, and I believe the hint box tells you to match the color of the switch, and so red switch means turn red like fire. I mentioned there was the fog room earlier that we like to gloom through. Another room that, like the fog, could be cleared up with a tornado. We got a sandstorm in this room that can also be cleared up by a tornado. But there's a bunch of slopes, so we're just going to use the slopes to gain some nice speed. But we're consistently taking damage. Fortunately, there's hearts in enough of these blocks that we can get out of this room with a decent amount of health. So we're not like in danger of death or anything like that. And there's a little boat. It's straight. Yeah, there it is. You see, it's a wooden boat on lava. Don't ask me how it exists on lava. It just does. But rather than slowly riding the boat across the lava, we just do a whole bunch of damage boosting because we gotta go fast. Alright, and now slow things down with an auto-scroller, although one thing I do get to point out, we might have seen some before, but this is usually the room that it comes into my head because I kind of am stuck looking at them. We got Super Mario World enemies here. Say hello to Rexes. And actually, just like in Super Mario World, they have, you know, standing up, full up, you know, height. But if you jump on them, I forget if I did in this run or not. I did. They get smushed. And then, yeah, Peach cannot, like, actually kill any enemies by jumping on them. They just get turned upside down. But anytime an enemy's turned upside down, you can just walk into them and instantly pick them up. Hit a couple extra lava there, got him low health, but sparing you the pain of having to hear that low health pulsing by getting some health back there. Also, we're nearing the point where usually we end up getting enough money to buy the Vibe Tea in a regular run, so you'll notice pretty soon here that our splits will be a lot similar to our PB and not 30 seconds behind anymore, which is good news for like just kind of getting a better idea of how we're doing compared to PB. There's another turnip for a single coin, but like I said, we don't care about coins anymore anyway, so it's no big deal. But yeah, this is the world where I think the stages start to get noticeably longer. Worlds 1 through 3 tend to fly by a little bit, but a nice thing about a lot of the first rooms in this stage is they're lengthy enough that we can just hit the ground running with a nice Gloom vibe to start off and get some full speed. Unfortunately, I missed the pipe there, which, if you've seen a number of my runs, I tend to point out that I think that pipes and doors are the true final boss of this game, because they're not necessarily too precise to enter, but there are times where if you're just too far left or too far right, pressing the button to get in just won't register, and that's just very unfortunate. It is nice with pipes, though, that if you're too far to the left, but you're like running to the right and you go into a slide, once you slide Peach into like center enough into the pipe, the game will register, oh, you're, you know, in entering range, and you'll be able to enter it. Another Toad hidden behind like a vibe puzzle here. That hint box there, it says, hey, there's a guy in the way there. Why not scare him away with your rage or something like that? Point being, I think Peach might have done a little bit more than scare him away. She completely just crumbled him to tiny bits. So, as innocent as I like to think Peach is sometimes, I don't know about that. Get a nice full jump, jumping over some lava there. And we got some more Slidebrella going on here, which I think is probably one of the cutest sprites in the game. Peach kind of like poking her head out from Perry there, and is kind of along for the ride. A little thing about the music in this room, the whistling you hear, the melody, doesn't start playing until you're on the zipline. So it's a nice little, you know, musical feature that they kind of added in. Some of these parachuting bob-ombs with the yellow parachutes are joy or happy bob-ombs. I think they might skip and hop a little bit when they get to the floor instead of just walking normally. But, you know, nice to see some more vibe-influenced enemies in the game. You see that? Yeah, looked a little happy. And even just seeing, like, some of the sprites of, like, happy Goombas, sad Goombas, happy paratroopers, just, like, the emotion on them, rather than just being, you know, spaced out one-note characters. It's a nice little touch this game has. One thing I can go into now, I mentioned it I can go earlier. I can go a little bit into plot of this game while we're kind of watching, saving some toads here, hitting some switches. I mentioned that there's actually like 2 plots to this game. One that I swear gets 0% closure. That one being Perry's backstory. So after every boss fight, you see Peach is just kind of hanging by a campfire, and Perry is there taking a nap. And every time, like if you don't skip it, you see Perry has a dream. And basically, with every world beat, you get a little more information of the dream. Like, it starts off with just you see Perry, and he's got like thought bubbles. And it's like it's Grandpa or something like that, and then wakes up. The next time it's Grandpa, and he looks so happy, and then wakes up, and then finally things start to happen. So Perry, who you like, I guess you're seeing everything through Perry's eyes, at least at first, sees what I guess is his grandpa. Don't really know. It's kind of unclear. But, you know, just hanging there. And then suddenly they get attacked by some wizard person and their henchmen. And it's unclear what happens to the grandpa, but basically they steal Perry. Basically steal Perry away. And at that point he looks like an umbrella. And they're like, oh, this umbrella is worthless. It's whatever, garbage. And they just kind of throw it on the side of the road. Like, so basically they just harass a grandpa and an umbrella. Oh, we're going to scare away another enemy real quick. Watch this. Look, he looks so scared. He's going to run away. And he didn't get away in time. He is dead. He is straight up dead. But, yeah. Quick routing side thing here. If you gloom instantly, you can jump over those fire wheels. Their movement is preset, so you can just time avoiding damage, getting nice jumps, getting to the goal ring fast. But yeah, so then then those villains that stole Perry just toss him on the side of the road. Some merchant walks up and sees the umbrella and is like, oh, this thing looks kind of cool. I'm going to take it, or whatever. And I guess starts having it for sale. And then Toadsworth, I guess, on one of his, you know, personal soul-searching trips, finds the merchant and sees Perry, the parasol there, doesn't see him as like anything alive, just sees the umbrella and thinks, oh, this thing looks very special. I'm gonna buy it from you. So the merchant sells it to him, and then Toadsworth walks happily home and with his new umbrella, which turns out to have a face or whatever. And so, like, as you watch those dreams, you see Perry being distracted, like, oh, what's this about? Where's my grandpa? What happened to him? I don't know. And he's kind of like distressed about that and all that, whatever. And like by the end of it, he's like, I'll save you later, Grandpa. Right now, I gotta help Peach save the world or whatever. So that cutscene where Perry says, I gotta help Peach save the world. I'll save you later, Grandpa, or whatever. That happens after World 7. And within this game, and within anything I know in the Mario universe, that is the end of that story. 0% closure. Wonderful, isn't it? So yeah. Unfortunate as that may be, Perry probably had some personal hero-saving adventure. Saved his grandpa. I don't know if he brought Peach along with him or not, but it happened after this game. But there's no evidence of it anywhere. Admittedly, there's very little evidence about this game anywhere. It's one of those games that really hit under the radar. Nintendo doesn't talk about it too much. It's unique, different, and honestly is pretty cool, albeit an easier game to play casually, as long as you know to save all the toads. But yeah, so not only does this game go a little unnoticed, there's a whole subplot that completely, even in-game, gets completely, at least finished of it, unnoticed. But yeah, so that's the B-plot, essentially. That's Perry's backstory. What kind of gets us in the situation of this story and this game in general is Bowser apparently has a timeshare, I don't know, at where this game takes place, which is Vibe Island, where there's this mysterious thing called the Vibe Scepter, and I guess he sends his goons out on a mission to find it. Also, you see we're intentionally hitting that one box because it had Vibe Meter in it, so I can run through this room faster without losing my Vibe Meter. But yeah, so he finds the Vibe Scepter, or his goons do whatever, and he says, with this we can make everyone at the Mushroom Kingdom go out of control with emotion, and in the ruckus we'll, you know, attack. Haha! Real quick thing here. If you time this right, you actually can put out that flame without damaging out of your gloom. Unfortunately, I started my gloom too late, so I just had to turn on a second one. But yeah, you put out the fire with your gloom tears, and then after that we just full speed ahead to the right. Damage boosting using a sandstorm, and then just kind of get out of here. But yeah, so Bowser enacts his plan, which actually you get to be a part of if you watch the full opening cutscene. You can use the touchscreen to close the doors of his villa so he can talk about his master plan to his goons or whatever. And then he sends in a Goomba to like run in with the Vibe Scepter and then give the all clear for Bowser's minions to attack. And you get to yell into the mic as the Goomba to give the Bowser fleet the all clear, I guess. So yeah, you get to be the villains for like 2 moments. It's kind of interesting little feature they added in. But anyway, that happens. The whole place is in chaos. Mario and Luigi get captured. Hundreds of Toads get captured. As you can see, they're all hidden in boxes. And Peach and Toadsworth were on a leisurely stroll, and they come back home to this chaos where everyone's been kidnapped and all that. And Peach is like, I'm gonna go save the day. And Toadsworth's, wait, you need this umbrella. Take it. I'm sure it'll help. And then Perry's like, I'm Perry the Parasol. I'm here to help. And then they go on their adventure. Next touchscreen minigame here, by the way. As you see, we just zoomed through World 4. It came and went. It's just a whole lot of tap, 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 tapping. So the small rocks only need 1 tap, the medium rocks need 3, and the big ones need 5. So all I'm just doing is mashing the tapping on the rocks on the touchscreen. And they give you a lot of coins. Doesn't really matter. We have all the money we need anyway. But yeah, definitely a lot of these touchscreen minigames can give you cash, which comes in handy for the 100% run because we need to buy everything in the shop. But here, not so much. Also, Pickly, I saw your comments. Peach has a dead stare during those cutscenes. She's just blankly staring at the fire. And yeah, it is pretty funny. So this Wiggler fight, also it's a Wiggler. Hey everyone. We flip Wiggler over with these trampolines, and I actually do a little damage boost to save a little time there. But basically what you have to do from here is, one, you better hope that you get some Vibe Crystals from these falling rocks every time Wiggler runs left and right. But you can speed up the fight by, like what I'm doing here, the screen shakes, and then Angry Wiggler runs by. Usually he'll run by fast, and you'll have to wait for him to come back and calm down and all that. But if you catch him while he's running fast, you can calm him down sooner and go into the next hit quicker. So that's basically, this fight is all about getting each hit, which every time you flip Wiggler upside down, one of his segments starts flashing, and that tells you which one's the one you want to hit. But yeah, so the screen starts shaking, immediately hit Rage Vibe, so that when Wiggler runs, perfectly timed, hits the plunger or spring, whatever you want to call it, flips him over, he calms down sooner, and you save on some running back and forth cycles of Wiggler. And once again, you see I stay with Rage so that the Rage damages Wiggler, and then I intentionally take damage so I don't have to wait for the short cutscene of turning off my vibe. Phase 2 time. Really, Wiggler is always using his vibe, which is anger, but the extra thing he enacts for Phase 2 is sends out poison gas, essentially. So you need to keep using your Joy vibe to clear up the air, or else you'll start taking damage. If you ever check out the work-in-progress tasks of this game, the Wiggler fight actually never clears up the fog. It just alternates between healing using Calm vibe and just doing damage to Wiggler, which is insane and like is ridiculous to watch. I recommend giving it a sneak peek. Even if it's just this one boss fight, I'd highly recommend it. Got a little scary here. I'm down to 1 health. Fortunately, so is Wiggler. So we're just going to do one last hit, go into Rage, keep it on, and we're not going to jump into Wiggler because that'll get me killed. So we just do the last hit. And we are donezo. Grab the toad. And all set. Yep, and all the cutscenes are skippable, so whenever you watch a run of this, it's straight up gameplay the entire time. And by cutscenes, I mean those cutscenes like between, like after each boss fight. Obviously, we have to stop every time we save a toad, but that's pretty brief, and we're back to running. So we're just jumping over all the water in this room. Nothing too interesting, but yeah, this is one of the stages that it really comes in handy that we bought that Gloom. We bought that Gloom, excuse me. We bought that Vibe Tea because there is a toad that's really high up in a vertical area, but also we need to get up to a different vertical area right in the same spot. There's no spot to like refill any vibe at any point when you get to that area, so you just have to watch out that you don't run out of vibe, and the way you do that is by grabbing those extra vibe teas. Give me a second here. So yeah, here's where it comes. We actually use this trampoline to gain some initial height, but then we need to vibe up here to skip these spears, because using these spears is very, very slow. So rather than doing that, we just hop up here, and then we drop down, and we use some more Joy vibe off to the right. And you see how little... We have a decent amount left, but it's like, if we didn't buy those extra vibe teas, we would have run out and fallen and had to basically... We'd be in so much trouble and have to wait for the spears, which goes so slow that it would not be worth it whatsoever. Alright, and we got an auto scroller here, so nothing too interesting going on for this little section. But yeah, just kind of hanging out, you know. But we're going to be using another one of those trampolines to get some major height to the goal ring after using Gloom. We don't really need the... like, we just happen to have Gloom on, but you just get to see how much extra height you get off of it. Get that extra Koopa for good measure. And we're off. Fair enough, Pickley. Say what you gotta say. So this room, there's a slope, and then there's these paratroopers. I've kind of hinted at the momentum of slopes. I've said that they're like the tied for the fastest speed along with Gloom. The thing, like, you can actually maintain that high speed if you jump the moment you land. So, if, like, the same frame you land, you jump instantly, you actually maintain all that momentum. But also when you land, there's like frames while you slow down to your normal running speed. So basically what you can do is even if you don't maintain full speed, you might still gain some faster than running speed. So a lot of times when jumping off of slopes, it's worth trying to jump again just to maintain that extra speed. And along with that, bouncing off of enemies is as if you jumped as soon as you landed. So anytime you can slide off a slope and then instantly jump, and slide off a slope and then bounce off of an enemy, that can save you a lot of speed, conserve a lot of speed for you. Trying to tweak something real quick. Give me a second. Not that, shoot. Yeah, so we got a nice little room full of sand pits here. The furthest one has a toad, and the one to the left of it has, you know, the exit of the stage. We can just kind of jump mash to get out of there. So this room, you can use the gloom and get some nice bounces off of these little spongy clouds. And it just makes the room a whole lot smoother than it could be otherwise. But you have to like hit the cloud in a certain way, because if you bounce off the right side of it, you launch to the right. So it's like physics makes a little bit of sense in a video game, which is a little crazy, I know. Coming up on actually, it's a strat that's been in the run for a while, but I always consider one of the spoopiest ones for me. And like, it has to do with where the second toad we save is. So, we're gonna climb up here, and we're actually gonna, there's a toad in this room, but we're gonna come back for it. So, this second room, or this room here has a toad in it, which real quick, puzzle, vibe puzzle. One that's less obvious. I don't know why tornadoing a geyser pushes it down, but as you can see, it helps. And we are here now. And we save a toad. But now we're going to go back to this previous room. There's actually a pipe that skips probably at least a third of the stage. But if we just take it, we could find ourselves accidentally skipping a toad. That's why we went forward a room and then doubled back to go to it. And I intentionally grabbed this spiny, and you'll see what I'm going to do with it here in a second. There's a toad up on a little ledge. And we just throw the spiny up there to save it. So you get a nice little three-point shot there. You might be wondering, why don't you just fly up here? I don't know if you see those little puffy clouds, but there's actually parts of this game where the developers were like, you know what? Sometimes using joy is too easy. We're going to make you have to solve our puzzles. So if you try to use joy, basically those little puff clouds in the air just all surround you and force you to turn off your joy. And so you just fall and lose. One, you lose a lot of vibe for trying to do it, and two, you make zero progress. Another auto-scroller here. I've tried to, like... There's some sea urchin enemies towards the end of it, which I'm trying to remember if I messed up getting past. I know I did in some recent run. I'll kind of explain as I get to it. But also a nice little montage of Mario World underwater enemies. Some of the fish may look familiar. Torpedo Teds from Soda Lake pay a visit. And we see just some of those, like, just those fish with the snorkels on them. I can't remember. Those look like fish in Super Mario World. But yeah, you see I'm just kind of fidgeting around while waiting for the auto-scroller. Not much to do here, but we're just cruising right along. One thing I can mention, though, you see I'm, like, this subbrella, as it's called, is spewing out bubbles. I'm blowing into the mic to make that happen. Also, so with this section, you need to stay down low to the ground and you can avoid all the urchins. Unfortunately, I stayed down a little bit too long, and I forgot to get in the pipe. But fortunately, I was able to get back in, and we're going to bounce off of this guy. Hold RRL to make sure the platform doesn't disintegrate, and we get to the goal ring. Perfect. So these Lakitus are very interesting enemies that can be really troublesome or not a problem. In this stage, he's not that big a deal. But in actually an earlier stage, I intentionally killed him because he just would have gotten in my way. Between him and the fish that jump whenever the heck they feel like it, they can just completely block your path. Fortunately, in Gloom Vibe, you're invulnerable enough that it didn't really cause too much trouble. Which I've mentioned at times you're like invulnerable enough or mostly invulnerable. That is the case with really the 3 vibes that you've been seeing so far. So like with Gloom Vibe, you can just run over enemies and it typically doesn't damage you. It won't necessarily destroy other enemies. It might just kind of knock them over. But you don't take damage. With Rage, usually you'll like just barrel through enemies and they'll completely, you know, look like they took a hit. And with Joy, either you'll just kind of brush past them, or if you're in tornado mode, they'll like fly away. But there are some enemies or obstacles that just doing that doesn't work. Like there's cannonballs that can hit you that'll make you take damage. Chain chomps you take damage from. Usually anything spiked can mess with you. Any of those things. So it's just kind of being wary of what you can and get through in certain vibe modes. And like these chain chomps are extra interesting in that like usually when you have invulnerability frames, iframes, you can just run through enemies, but the developers decided to just give chain chomps a hard constant hitbox. So if you take damage from them and then you try to run through them, they will just push you and not let you pass. So you need to hide in those little cubbies to avoid you know, not being able to progress. There's actually one stage where it's possible to abuse that to your advantage, and rather than being blocked by a chain chomp, you get kind of pushed forward. You'll see me give it a try. It's in World 7. I'll kind of give a heads up as we get to it. Yeah, so this section, there's just a lot of hopping on short platforms. It can be a little scary. You can, like, I've been trying to gloom through it recently for the sake of going through it fast, but the water can really be troublesome. You can see at the very end, though, that wave just came to my rescue and just came up, which is glorious. In here, this is a very confusing room casually because there's, like, 5 or 6 different branching paths, but the secret is to go up and immediately drop down and go back left. But the course itself does not lend you into thinking that's what you should do. So just kind of, it's one of those things that once you know the route, anytime you see someone playing this casually and is exploring certain ways, you just kind of think that's the wrong way, that's a dead end, but still, like, it's worth exploring casually. This is a long room to end the stage on. There's a few blocks here and there that might give you some vibe back, so like that early one I tried to get. Enemies you can try to absorb vibe from. By the time I ran out of vibe, though, I felt like I was close enough to the end that taking the time to turn the vibe back on and the risk of running out of it again wasn't worth it, so I just ran as normal to finish it off. Another stage that we get to start off in Gloom Vibe. This Lakitu can actually be kind of helpful. So like I mentioned, some spiky things tend to knock you out of vibe. You can actually line it up so that you get hit by the spike while you're standing on the pipe so that you don't have to watch the animation of getting out of vibe and then instantly just go down the pipe. But timing it's not always the easiest thing to do, and a lot of times I just naturally turn off the vibe myself. which it doesn't like it's time saving. Obviously, I always want to try to save time, but also I'm sure there's much more major things in my runs that are worth focusing on. So there's a spear off to the right. Here it comes. We're going to ride this to the left to get a toad. There's a few of those little poof cloud thingies. You see them right there by the spikes that will just refuse to let you fly up to this toad. So you just got to wait for that spike, or that spear, excuse me, to come down. But we're going to take advantage of this vibe crystal. And we've got so much vibe that we're just going to hop off to the right here. So I meant this is another stage that an alternate like shortcut was found that like the first few runs of this game, it actually went through 2 submarine sections, a lot of slow, tedious rooms. We're going to be skipping that because there was a pipe found up high in a room that just takes you to the end of the stage. Unfortunately, it skips a toad. Fortunately, that toad is only backwards 1 room. So, yeah, this submarine room right here actually is 2 Subbrella rooms. I think we'll get a sneak peek of the other one. Yeah, that area up above where that coin is, we don't have access to that right now. There's a second pair of pipes for the upper half of this room. You might be able to see a pipe above us here. I don't fly high enough, but there's area up there. There is a submarine section up there as well. But yeah, this Lakitu is actually definitely very useful because we bounce off of him to then Joy up to this pipe. And this pipe takes us to the very end of the stage, but we're like, hang on, bro, give me a sec. I'm gonna go back a room. And yeah, okay. I'm low on health here, so actually you do get a nice little mini showcase of the calm vibe. And I've mentioned that all vibes have that little animation when you start and stop them. Interestingly, calm vibe getting turned off does not have that little animation. So I intentionally, I believe, go straight from gloom into calm, because that way I only have the one animation for vibe transition. And then when I turn off gloom, you'll see it's off. There was no freeze frame. So other than the fact that I had to like move my hand down to the touch screen, movement wise, I didn't really lose any time, which is pretty sweet how that works out. And then I gloom for as much of this room as I can. Unfortunately, don't make it to the goal ring, but pretty close, and we're out of the stage. And coming up is the next touchscreen minigame before a boss fight. So we're actually more than halfway through the worlds now, so the touchscreen minigames start recycling. I think this is the easier log rolling one, or at least the faster one, because the timing of the spears here is so nice that we can just constantly keep rolling, and none of these spears will hit us until the very last one. Its cycle is such a way that we do have to wait for it to go by before finishing. So you'll see up here, I'm going to stop for a sec, and then go again. And this blooper fight, this gives me anxiety. Also, I accidentally paused there because I was mashing start to skip the cutscene a little too early. But this fight, no idea if it's AI manipulation, no idea if it's RNG, but the deal with this blooper, which it's another boss that shows up in Sunshine, a lot of Sunshine looking bosses here. It has 4 tentacles, you attack all 4, and after doing so, you see the lip starts flashing, and you can damage Blooper. The thing is, it is very unclear what determines how fast the Blooper will attack you, but you need the Blooper to attack you before you can damage it. So you can see, the thing you want to get is the Blooper sort of stomping the ground with the tentacle, because that's something you can easily hit and, you know, avoid. Because a lot of times Blooper will grab you or throw you up in the air, and that just really slow you. Actually, I actually got grabbed earlier. But yeah, so there have been times where I'm just standing there and Blooper is just kind of chilling, unsure what he wants to do with his life. Like, am I going to attack you? Am I not? Am I going to use this tentacle? Am I going to use that tentacle? And you can just waste time just standing here. So all you can really do is just roll with the punches of what you get until we find there's actually a legitimate way to do AI manipulation, if there is any. If not, this truly is just an RNG fight where Blooper attacks whenever he feels like it. Fortunately, we seem to be getting pretty fast attacks here, and you can see I'm deliberately using the whack attack to get knocked back towards the direction of other tentacles, just to kind of get into the next hit quicker. And here we go, come up to Phase 2 with Blooper. Phase 2 is actually just Blooper tries to use Calm Vibe. So Blooper takes a nap. If you don't pop that bubble, Blooper will start to heal. So we just use Rage to, you know, pop it as soon as possible. Get on to the last hit of Blooper, you know. I got grabbed there, unfortunately. It's very strange because the hitbox and the hurt box, if it's clear what I'm referring to there, I don't even know, of the tentacles are like slightly off. That sometimes you think you jumped off the tentacle and damaged it, and sometimes you don't, you just get grabbed, and it's very unclear what went wrong. And so this boss fight can be very frustrating. It can like be the bane of your existence, and you can lose a lot of time on it. It can save you a lot of time. And it's just basically luck of the draw, it seems to be, as of right now. There's another cutscene skipped. Yeah, so now we got World 6 Snowman Land, which is not what it's called, but, you know, I'm thinking of all the stage names of other games. But yeah, it's time to visit the Snowland, which is actually one of the whatchamacallit, shorter stages in the game. We're going to get the Toads really fast, and we're going to be ending pretty darn quick shortly thereafter. Yeah, and I think a pretty unique use of gloom here. We cry on this platform, and the tears freeze, and it becomes ice, and we get some nice sliding movement going there. So if you get a nice angle there, I'm not used to that, you can slide straight under that platform, like under that ledge, but you can see if you don't get all the way across, you just get pushed back. Usually I don't go instantly into the slide, so I was surprised that I made it under there, and that's why I accidentally pulled up early. But you see, we've already grabbed the third Toad. We're basically done with the stage already. There's 2 Toads in this room, which it's very uncommon that multiple Toads are in the same room, but in this stage it's the case. Yeah, and you see we've been grabbing these mini-games. This is the, I believe the final mini-game we'll be getting. Yes. So there are 3 touchscreen mini-games in this game that you can... Actually, not all touchscreen mini-games, excuse me. One's Toad Shot. That one is a touchscreen minigame. It's basically like you're just tapping a bunch of balloons in the air that are in the shape of Bowser and Hammer Bro and Koopas and stuff and Goombas, and you just need to score a high score. There is a game called Toad Tote, which you're like dragging a toad through like a fiery village, essentially. And the third one is Toad Jump, which involves the use of the microphone, and by blowing into the microphone, the Toad jumps, and you're just hopping over obstacles. It kind of looks like a mobile game Endless Runner, honestly. That would be like my first but it's not an Endless Runner, though, because there's like 10 stages all with an end, but it's just, you know, one of those jump over obstacles kind of games. Yeah, if you ever see a 100% run of this game, which is very extensive, you will see those 10 stages for all 3 minigames played. And there was a calm Hammer Bro, which was taking a nap, and a nice joyous Bob-omb. One of the more obvious puzzles with vibes. There's ice, so you melt it with fire. And we actually use a little, not a death warp, but I guess a void plane warp, just to reset ourselves at the beginning of the room where we loaded in. That is a bouncy ball that we could use to bounce up to this Toad and also to the end of the stage, but rather than that, we just kind of fly into this platform. And then from there, we just gloom the rest of the way out of this room. It's a high jump to get to the end, but it's not too high that gloom can't reach it. So we're all set. I believe this is one of the rooms that other runners might have different routes in. I've mentioned this game is like constantly evolving. There are no finalized routes to the point where like I do this stage a certain way and some other runners might do it a different way. And it's kind of cool comparing like which one works out, or actually in the end, oh, they might average out because, oh, you save your vibe for somewhere else. Because you can see I'm out of vibe now. So I need to intentionally grab vibe either from there or from an enemy in the next room. And boy, did I get trolled by that door. Because I need to use Gloom up here to turn this platform to ice. Because if not, I can't make this slide. And yeah, these snowmen take 3 whacks with the parasol or just 1 bump into them with rage. So I believe using rage can actually get through the snowman a little faster. It's something I've kind of messed around with in recent runs. Haven't like fully confirmed, but you can see compared to how long it took me to take out that snowman. We do lose the time of turning the rage vibe on and off though. One thing I don't know if you heard while I was climbing up that ladder here, like, whomp, 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 whomp. What's going on there is the fastest way to climb up the ladder, rather than watch the actual, like, ladder climb animation, you can just mash the jump button to get it, like you see at the spot there, too. The thing you have to watch out for when doing that is when you get to the top of the ladder, like, if you're holding up, Peach will do an animation of climbing up the ladder, as opposed to if you just kind of jump when you're towards the top of the ladder without holding up. You will just jump past the threshold of climbing the top, and then you'll just be on top of the ladder. So you want to hold up and mash A, so that you, like, because holding up is what makes you re-grab the ladder. However, you want to let go of up towards the end to skip that animation, but a lot of times if you're mashing too fast, you just don't catch it in time. Another auto-scroller here. This world has a decent amount of auto-scrollers, but there are bonsai bills here, which make for a fun little interesting game of see if you can catch one, because as you know, Peach is the strongest person in the Mushroom Kingdom, and can pick up bonsai bills with relative ease, as shown there. And using slopes to finish this stage off, and you can see I'm bouncing off enemies, and the bouncing off of the enemies kept my slope momentum that kind of little bit of movement I was hinting at before. This room is full of slopes, so we try to use them to our advantage to get the best amount of speed possible across the entire room. It's tricky though, because you can accidentally get knocked back by the enemies or jump at a bad time and fall down one of those pits and have to fly back up. And another one of those times where there's moving platforms we could wait for, but we got plenty of vibe to avoid that. So why do that when you can just as easily fly up? And we still have plenty of vibe to spare, so it's not even an issue. But yeah, more auto-scrolling. This is the kind of time that if this is, got time for donations, am I right? Yep, and nice little, sneaky, hidden door behind a snowman there. And not only can Peach slide on these icy platforms, so can those blocks. So that's the little thing we get to do there with whacking that block so it slides. This Koopa is how we're going to save this Toad. There have been times, if you're not careful, if you throw it wrong, the Koopa shell can despawn, and it just, you have to reset the Koopa. You have to, like, leave the area, like, move far away from where the Koopa is and then come back. There is a nice, easy place to stand that I don't have to worry about, though, fortunately, which is what happened there. So we're good. And this is one of the rooms that I like to complain about the fish in, because they jump at RNG. Like, the times they jump is completely RNG. A lot of times you can just be hopping off of them and one just says surprise and jumps up just like that and just screws you over. So yeah, you just gotta watch out for that. And there's trampolines to get up here, but why do that when you can fly, right? Oh, gotta watch out when you're low on health. And it looks like I didn't get Starfy to show up, and what I mean by that is, in this room I'm about to go into, I'm pretty sure I don't get him, let me check. Yeah, on that platform up there, and also in 2 sections earlier in the run, there is a chance that a star character, which is Starfy, from another game that the developers of this game made, has the possibility of showing up, and actually you have to like catch him in all 3 places in order to fill out your enemy glossary. You have to catch every enemy, and he's considered an enemy. And you have to catch him in all 3 places to add him to the glossary, which is something you need to do for the 100% run. So you're just kind of stuck loading and unloading the rooms that Starfy can spawn in until he shows up. Which fortunately he always spawns right by a loading zone, like a pipe or a door. I believe it's always a pipe. So you can just kind of keep holding down to enter and exit the pipe over and over again until he actually spawns. And the way the submarine controls work, by the way, I don't think I've mentioned it before. Like I said, blowing into the mic blows bubbles, but it's got very much standard swimming controls, with like Donkey Kong Country has, or Mario World, where it's just you tap A to go up. If you're not tapping anything, you just gradually fall down. My brain kind of parallels it to Flappy Bird a little bit as well. But yeah. Just like that. During my early runs, when I was still like not as confident in my knowledge of the route, this stage I always found it made me a little anxious, I could say, because if you look at my individual level split, I'm at a little timer, so I'm now like about coming up on 2 minutes into the stage, and you'll notice in the top right corner, I have not saved a single toad yet. And we're still a bit of a ways away, especially because this is one of the top 2 or 3, if not number 1, I can't remember, longest auto-scrollers in this game. Like this one room I'm in. And we're just kind of hanging in here, finding any kind of way to waste time. Whacking the umbrella to the music, jumping to the music, you know. But it takes forever before you get your first toad, and next thing you know, you have all 3 and you're leaving the stage. Like, how did that happen is how it feels. It's a little strange. So, when you first run this game, like, or if you're playing it casually, you might get a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, I've been in here so long, why don't I have any toads yet? And then you keep on, like, double, triple checking before you even get to what's essentially the second to last room where your first toad is. And you can see we're nearing the 3-minute mark, still no toads. And it just keeps going like that, on and on. Finally you get to that door at the end of the room though. And then suddenly you're like, ooh, icicles. Let's melt those. And there's your first toad finally at the 3-minute, 15-second mark, essentially. And you have to be a little careful with your vibe in this stage, because you basically need some before every single toad. You had to use the fire to melt the ice, you had to use the gloom to make the ice here. I intentionally grabbed this vibe right here. And there's a few more icicles we need to melt, and then we have to use some joy as well. And if you're not careful, you can legitimately just run out, and then you're stuck You see I got a little baby Goomba on me there, so I just used Rage to burn it off. I believe those baby Goombas are originally in Mario Bros. 3, and they just kind of get stuck on you. You have to jump a bunch to get them off of you. But in this case, we can just use a vibe to get it off. But basically, it just stunts your jumping. Oh, here we go. We got walruses here. We're going to do a walrus jump, get some nice height, skip the trampoline. Anytime I get to that part in this stage in a run, I'm just like, walrus jump. It's a fun little thing. It's I guess you'd call it a trick of the game. Definitely not a glitch, but fun little part of the game. And that is the end of all the stages in World 6. It's already boss time. So yeah, World 6 can come and go pretty fast, I think. At least compared to how long World 5 is out of nowhere. But similar to World 4, the volcano area, we're just tapping. Anytime you see a pink split, by the way, you can see for 6-5 there's one. That is just how I mark my gold splits. I call them peach splits. Usually I'll have a nice little sound effect of Peach going sweet, just for fun. But yeah, so yeah, time is like continuously being saved on this game. Newly adopted strat actually in this stage, which is still a little rough, but this Blazarus boss fight has like a preset attack routing. Before we wouldn't wait for Blazarus to charge off, we would just go for an instant hit, but now we can actually skip an ice beam attack essentially by having Blazarus run to the left first and then spawn those icicles. So you see I do that. I turn off the rage vibe because this is another one of those stages that having the extra vibe meter comes in real handy, because if I didn't have it, I would have to be refilling vibe on a way more regular basis. And you just better hope that those icicles that keep spawning give you good vibe RNG drops. So now Blazarus goes into phase 2, the joy phase, and is suddenly a wizard of sorts. But you're still doing the exact same thing, just using your rage to melt the ice. But yeah, it saved a little bit of vibe by whacking the icicle down. And I'm just trying to alternate between damaging Blazarus and also going to icicles to get vibe back. Just because that's what you gotta do. So, like, I'm running low on vibe, you can see now, so I'm going to be able to get one hit in. It's like it takes 3 hits total of, like, per actual damage. So I got 2 in there. Now I need to come over to this icicle just to get one more hit on Blazarus, and they're dead. And that leads us in to World 7, which is up in the clouds. And that jump I just made there is actually a very tight jump. A lot of times it's safer to grab the vine, but I wanted to push my timing there. And then there's a ladder we grab. You bounce off the paratroopa and just grab the bottom of that ladder, and it skips a little bit of platforming, so it's pretty cool to pull that off. And I don't know how the last time we saw these blue blocks, but we got to use Gloom to run across them fast. And that gets us to Toad number 1 of the stage. And actually World 7 has, I think, one of my favorite vibe puzzles coming up. I won't spoil it quite yet. I'll tell you, it uses the rage vibe for movement. I'm not going to tell you what it does yet. Leave you a little bit in suspense. It's all good. It's all good, don't worry, Pickley. It's definitely been interesting keeping an eye on all this. Yeah, another windmill. Unfortunately, I didn't get Fortunately, got stuck on the platform there. But, yeah. Yep, actually you can see those little puffy clouds again. Reminder, you can't use joy past those. This is one of those stages that you had to use, like, the intended platforming strats. And I'm a little low on vibe right now, and I want vibe for this vertical room coming up. Fortunately, we got some Goombas up ahead that are going to come in much handy for that. So I intentionally stopped to grab them before saving this Toad. Because this next room is just, we're going vertical. And basically the stage wants you to, like, jump up the right side, go across a vine, jump up, you know, go across a vine to the left side, jump up the left side, and up and up and up. But instead of doing all that, you can just see all the platforming I'm skipping, and I'm just at the end. And then we just sneak past these spinies to the end. On to 7-2. And I mentioned the Chain Chomps, like, having the strange hitboxes. Here's where I believe we get to see me trying to put it in action. So you can't run through them even when you have iframes. So if you kind of like jump in front of it, like so, you can use that extra push. Like even the camera kind of doesn't go as fast as Peach there. It gets interesting. You can completely shoot off the camera if you get like the perfect rocket launch. Actually, like when you do that, it's actually too much, but it looks really funny to see happen. But yeah, we kind of wait to watch that figure-eighting paratroopa cycle so we can bounce off of it, skip going across a vine, skip needing any vibe, and just get up to this toad nice and smooth. Another vertical auto-scroller here. There's two angry Goombas, which they look all grumpy. One of the things they actually do is sort of stomp the ground, and if you're on the ground, you get temporarily stunned when that happens. Hi, Might Fox. How's it going? Welcome. Welcome to this commentated any % run. Enjoy your stay. But yeah, so we're just gonna eat those guys up. Make sure we have full vibe, just because it's always nifty to have. And we're gonna skip that slope, but use that one to get some speed. And the interesting thing about these clouds, once they start pulsating, they're still there visually, but their hit detection's completely gone. So we actually stop using Joy significantly before we actually see that cloud despawn. Now this room has some nice slopes that we want to use to slide to the right fast, but there's a lot of bonsai bills that just get in our way. I used to take a zip line that was like towards the top of that room, and I would backtrack to this room, and I think it was other runners that sort of basically told me, you're a fool, just fly in this room and save a whole bunch of time. So I have to admit, I am not responsible for 100% of the routing of this game. You try to run Speed Kirby's under it. It failed because some reason the timer won't show up. I don't know much. Like, is it an in-game timer, Mike Fox? This room, like, it looks like I did it pretty smoothly this time, but with all the paratroopas, parabombs, and holes, you can just get knocked back, and you can try to mash Joy to save your life, but just fall to your doom and have to reset the room. So you just have to be careful there. There's one of them flying hammer bros from Mario World. Gotta love the cameos. Followed by Ravens again. How are they doing? In-game timer, I think, because he wins. I honestly don't know how the in-game timer works in that game, Might Fox. I apologize. Wish I could be more help for you. I'm not used to in-game timers mid-level. Yeah. So this room you saw I used Gloom, and I completely drained my vibe meter, so I just grabbed some enemies' vibe there. There's actually also a vibe crystal in this room, and I believe a Lakitu that wants to cause you trouble. Yeah, he was taking a nap, but I don't even think it's possible to get past him without waking up, so we just eliminate him early. I don't know how much I've mentioned it, but this game casually is very friendly. You can see how it doesn't take a lot of money to get your vibe meter filled up, like to purchase the bonus vibe. You have a total of 6 damage to begin with, and can get an extra 6 if you spend the money on it. Anytime you're about to fall down a cliff, if you're fast enough, you can turn on Joy. If you fall down a cliff, it doesn't actually kill you. You just reset in the room you're in and lose a half heart or 1 damage. Like I've mentioned before, the game saves every nanosecond. But it's interesting to see, like, when a game looks easy casually, like, how that translates to what kind of optimizations you need to do to make it, like, become a more interesting speed game. Oh, and here's that cool movement I was talking about. So this is one of the things, I think, the cleverest things in the game. Using your rage as the fuel to a hot air balloon to fly up. Yeah, and there's plenty of vibe in this room to refill, because we're going to Gloom, and there's a windmill coming up. So I'm going to go straight from Gloom into Vibe, and Gloom into Joy, and then get over to this Toad by opening the gate. That brown noise is a sad raven. They actually work very similarly to a mad Goomba where they can stun you. One of the bosses I really hate in Kirby Adventure is the Sun and Moon. I feel like I've seen them before, Mike Fox, but I'm not too familiar with them. I've played very few Kirby games, honestly. I've mostly, I think I probably the series I've played most of is the Mario series, as you can clearly see by this game. Here we go. Now we don't got time to wait for platforms, so we just Joy there. And even more so of that right here. Because if not, we'd have to run all the way to the right and then back and climb up that ladder. And if you watch the... oh, you're playing Kirby's Adventure now? Nice. If you watch my Low Toad run, that little bean sprouter, where that is, will play an interesting role, but because it avoids the Toad, we won't be seeing it here. These floating platforms, if you know where they are, which a lot of times I get a little nervous, you can sort of just jump off to the right and try to catch them all. But you have to be really careful not to jump to your death because you don't see where the platforms are. So that's why sometimes I'll kind of like slow down with it, you know? Another hot air balloon section coming up here. I wonder if you can speed on my... I don't have the game to speedrun, unfortunately, Mike Fox, and I don't know anything about the game to want to either. Talking about platforms that you can't really see that well, we're going to be using some of these trampolines, and we're going to be trying to jump on some of them that we can't really see, so you kind of have to like learn the spacing of them, which since this saves enough time that it's worth doing consistently, I've kind of gotten better at. So you can see I skipped a few platforms as trampolines straight to the angle ring there. So here we go, all time here. Good to know, Mike Fox. I think if I might start with emulator though. I don't know. Yeah, so this stage is significantly routed. Like, I intentionally took damage by that spike ball. I'm going to be in a very specific place when I get rid of this cloud, and it times perfectly that I can pick up that parabomb. This stage used to cause me so much trouble for the longest, so I decided I'm just going to grind out the perfect route for it. So here we intentionally get slope momentum, jump over this flying paratrooper, intentionally get hit by that hammer, and use the iframes to run through that guy. And now we need more vibe in this room, so I'm just going to farm a number of these Goombas, and I might even grab some more later. Because there's a toad really high up, and I want to fly to it rather than waiting for a platform. So basically my meter's full now. I'm going to jump up, get some height, and then the rest of it I'm going to use flying for. I might have done overkill just to be safe, because you see how much vibe I have left now, but there are other times where I just completely run out and I have to wait for the platform cycles, or even farm some more vibe, unfortunately. So I just completely wanted to avoid that here. But yeah, so let me just keep on hopping up now. So this room, we got to sneak down to the bottom here. And there's a switch we got to hit to make some platforms appear. And like, you could probably fly past the platforms, but then we wouldn't have enough vibe to get up to the toad, possibly. So I hop up here and then afterwards fly to get to the rest of the way. Oh. Nice little submarine auto-scroller here. There's, like, I used to not know this. I think other runners showed me there's this secret lower passageway that you can take. But basically it's just a little smoother and you can sort of zone out a little more, but you still want to be focusing. You've never heard of Super Princess Peach, Might Fox? Interesting. What's the first console I collect games for? I don't know, Might Fox. I mean... Yeah, so you see I'm hugging the right of the screen here. That's because the pipe's coming up and I want to enter it as soon as possible. So actually this time, I got, like, basically when the pipe loaded in, I was able to get in. So that went pretty smoothly. And just hopping across to the end here. So really that was one of a lot of times, even with all the routing I do, I can still screw that state up. So honestly, I'm pretty happy with how that stage went. And more trampolines here. This one has an interest, like similar to in World 1 where we try to skip a trampoline. I actually intentionally only go up one trampoline here to not have to wait for the Paragoomba cycle, and then I jump up the rest of the way. And now we got a Magic Koopa. Might Fox, I wouldn't say, like, when it comes to picking a game to speedrun, I mean, I guess it might be nice to have, like, an easy game because then maybe it's less intimidating. But I would say it mostly comes down to what would you have the most fun doing. And a lot of times I feel like it's the game you're like nostalgic for or just enjoy for any special reason. Like, I didn't play this game growing up, but I'm a huge fan of Princess Peach, which is what got me into this. Real quick, I should describe what's going on in this boss fight. I mean, we're just using Joy to twist his head and it makes him dizzy, then we can take damage. Phase 2 happens, he goes into gloom mode. Your floating platform is now gone. And you just have to fly up to him. And rather than flying back up to damage, I'm just going to stay down low and use my rage to set him on fire. And that does damage, and we just do that one more time, and that is it for this dude. Yeah, Might Fox, I would just say whatever game you have fun playing, and if like glitches are too intimidating, just don't worry about comparing yourself to other runners. I would say the best thing is just what do I have fun doing, what tricks can I do, which ones do I want to learn, and then just doing a run with those things. And just having fun and like working on getting yourself better. Also, we didn't save a Toad here. We saved a green man. Specifically Luigi, but the game decides not to point out that it's Luigi. Nowhere in this game does it actually use the word Luigi. He's always the green man or just some other person. Alright, so World 8, this is where it can get really tough. Comparatively speaking, anyway. This is where the game really becomes a labyrinth. Some of the stages get really long. And all that. Princess Peach is cheating on my... I mean, they're not in a relationship officially, are they? But yeah, we're going to use a little bit of a damage boosting out of vibe here with the thwomps. Just to save some time. There we go. And there's a toad at the end. Yeah, so the way this stage works, you could just take a beeline straight to the end by it's like a labyrinth of doors. But like with every fork in the road with the doors, one leads to a toad and one leads you forward. And I think sometimes one even resets you to the beginning. But so along the way, we basically have to stop at every single toad loop, in which the loop kind of brings us back to the set of doors. And then we move forward, go to the next little loop, and then move forward. And just then we finally get to the end after that. So, like, if it weren't for the toads, this stage would actually go by really fast. Which there's a different category called Low Toad that does that. Yeah, so we head off to the left here. And now we've got these thwomp faces in the background. So they're, like, trying to catch Peach, I guess. So basically what you have to do to not get caught is you have to match the pose of the statue. So here you have to be standing still. Fortunately, like, you're able to get through with only one time where the game freezes. So here you have to be ducking. And then I run really fast and get to the door before the thwomp has another chance to inspect the room, and we're out. This last one is probably the tightest one that you can usually get in with the thwomp only looking once, but it's a lot harder to do. Here you have to be in your descent of a jump or in the middle of a float. And where this hammer bro is can really cause you trouble. So you can see, just to be safe, I did an extra jump just to make sure I don't get in trouble. Okay, cool. Alright, so we have all three toads, so now it's just you take the high door there, you take the low door here, and then I'm going to take this hammer bro for the sake of its vibe. And we actually have a throwback to World 3's rotating rooms coming up ahead here. So in this last section we take a pipe instead of a door, a nice little trick. But yeah, but the nice thing is, rather than actually rotating for a lot of it, we're just gonna fly and be like, I don't want to wait for all these rotations. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, Frost, Mario's just Peach's main squeeze. We got Luigi on the side. Okay. Sure. Alright, but done with that stage now. Moving on to 8-2. It's just a video game. But, boy, this auto-scroller, it's going vertical, you're going left, you're going up, you're going right, you're going up, you're going left, rinse, repeat. But like the way it's all set, you really only get one shot at each moving platform. Or for most of them. You can see I'm playing around with the ladder. If you like hold B and down, you sort of do a slide down. There's really no reason to ever do that. It's better, faster just let go of the ladder and let gravity run its course. But yeah, anytime you're in an auto-scroller and your vibe's not maxed out, it's always a good time to stop and absorb some enemies, because in doing so you don't lose any time because you're in an auto-scroller. But in like regular rooms, you have to stop in place and you lose all your movement speed. But movement speed is kind of irrelevant in an auto-scroller as long as you stay on screen. The only thing you could really do to lose time here, besides falling down a pit, is accidentally turning on a vibe. Which, I mean, in case of emergencies, use joy if you fell off a platform. It's better to have to use joy to save yourself than have to reset the entire room. But still, If you can avoid all that entirely, that's better. And then once you get towards the top of the room, you want to get up high early because you can enter this door before it completely appears on screen. And now we've got a whole room full of these moving platforms. This is kind of like, I guess, the gimmick of this specific stage is all these moving platform blocks. You'll see a number of stages that have it. Actually, a nice little lucky vibe drop there just to make sure I don't run out of vibe. You can't really decide when enemies decide to drop vibe. It's all up to RNG. But kind of nice how it turned out there. I had a weird little knockback by the platform. That was really strange. It was like I was kind of squished within the block and the corner of the platform or whatever, so the game didn't know what to do with me, so it just kind of pushed me back out. This game has a few oddities when it comes to like Peach's reaction to walls and stuff. Another one of these swamp rooms. Gotta get a nice fast gloom in here. You could take damage to get out of the gloom, but I just wanted to run all the way to the door. And there's a toad here that I feel like is easily forgettable because, you know, in a lot of 2D platformers, you just think, gotta run to the right, run to the right. But you gotta pay a quick visit to the left here. And there's, like, no real obvious hint that it's over here. But, yeah, just gotta know. Oh, and actually, I think we're coming up on a boo I wanted to call out earlier. It's a rage boo that you actually saw in World 3, but I didn't mention it. It's unique in that it works backwards compared to other boos. You see, it doesn't move when you look away from it. But when you look at it is when it moves at you, which is opposite of how boos usually work. So it's a unique style of boo that, as far as I know, has not really been featured in other games, like reverse movement boos. And if it has, then feel free to correct me and make me look dumb. It's okay. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just play the game. Maybe. I mean, when are... Frostvirus, when are physics 100% realistic in a video game, let's be real. Now this room can be really annoying because you need to watch out with your vibe. I made it up here, but then this cannonball decides, nope, too bad, you fall. And I have to drop down. Basically, you see I'm looking for the nearest vibe. I'm kind of panicking for a little bit, so I lost some time. But yeah, so fortunately there's that little cannonball down there, and I was able to fly up. But yeah, those cannonballs, actually, even if I was in vibe, that cannonball could have knocked me back, given me damage, and I would have lost my progress. And a lot of times you're just low on vibe in this room, so if you fall down, it just takes a lot of time to get back up for the sake of needing to refill vibe, which is very unfortunate, because that was notably costly. So we've got torches we gotta light here. Unfortunately, rage does not work on them. We are stuck resorting to using those blue fires that kind of follow us around. Which, there's actually a number of rooms that we're going to be seeing like that. That we just have the flame chasing us around for a while. There's another unique boo here, which I thought this was the only game that had it, but I learned Yoshi's Story has it too. And this is a whole mass of them, and you'll see them for a second when I go in this pipe, and it's blindfolded boos. So basically, because they can't see you, they can run all they want. But Yoshi's Story has a similar style of boo to that, a blindfolded one that actually I think attacks based on sound or something, but the fact that no matter which way you're looking, it reserves the right to attack. And yeah, we fly up to get this first toad in the stage. And even though World 8 is really long, I feel like whenever I'm playing it during the run, it flies by. I don't know how it feels when watching it. But World 8 is definitely a very long world, especially because of all the rerouting you have to do to get all the toad. Like, all the, I don't know what you call them, pit stops you basically take along the way. Because a lot of the places you go are not forward, necessarily. Fortunately, there is one friendly toad that decides to just be right in front of your face here. Every now and then they put themselves in not-so-secret areas. You can use knockback here. I think I screwed it up. Yes, you could actually get knocked back up on top of that platform up there, and it can save you a little bit of platforming. It looks really cool to pull it off. I do not know, Might Fox. I do not know why they will not make another Princess Peach game. I really hope they make one soon, but unfortunately I don't know how much I can hold my breath on that. Low on health, so unfortunately we're stuck hearing this noise. We get to use the Wrecking Ball with our Gloom. That is one crazy umbrella for sure. This umbrella is very, very utilitive. It was a zip line, it was a submarine, it was a weapon, it was, you know, a standard video game parasol. Also, so in this room, I believe if at optimal speed, you can get away with only having to stop twice. It's a little tight, and if I recall, so I got stuck on the wall there, which lost me time. I gambled, tried to get in. Unfortunately, I turned off my gloom, I guess, the frame before he looks, which was not enough time to go in the door. So I'm stuck so you get to see what it looks like to have to reset this room, which obviously for a speedrun's sake is not good, but, you know, featuring a little bit more gameplay, right? But yeah, the umbrella also tucks you in. The umbrella eats enemies. It has the power to fire Kamehamehas if you buy the power-up for it. Yeah. Is utilitive a word? Good utility? Something like that. Dark room here, you're supposed to use rage to light up, but instead we just fly to the top and just ignore the whole thing. And like I said, parry the parasol makes for a good submarine. So, submarine time. And friendly reminder that this is a DS game that uses all of its features, the DS's features. So it's got 2 screens, the touch screen is active, the microphone is what shoots those bubbles. So I think it's really cool how this game, like, they designed this game to be a DS game, not just a game on the DS, if that makes sense. Fire, what did I say about fire? I don't know, Frost, I'm sorry. A lot of times I fail to listen to myself speak. Took a little bit of damage there, so we're stuck with low health. I remember the first time my brother saw Peach's low health animation, he thought it looked like Peach was having a heart attack, which made me chuckle a little bit, because she's frozen in that, like, in pain pose. Like, basically, like, hand at her heart or something. I found that kind of amusing. And if you haven't noticed, Peach likes to remind you at the end of every stage that was easy. So apparently, according to Peach, this game is easy. And she might not be wrong. Not necessarily an easy speedrun, though. Easy to get into, I'd say. It's, besides the fact that it's on the longer side, it's very accessible. The speedrunning community is very friendly. I try to encourage people to ask questions. I love helping people out as they try to learn some tricks in the game. Other runners in our Discord also try to, like, give each other tips. We discuss strats in there. And it's just a really cool little, admittedly small group, but slowly growing day by day. Every now and then we get someone else join the Discord and say, hey, I'm thinking of playing this game, or I used to love this game. And it's been very interesting to see this community grow from the bottom up. And I'm actually really happy to be a part of it. Any discounts you know about me speedrunning Discord? I don't understand what you're asking. Might Fox, I'm sorry. But another gravity room here that we don't even rotate a single time because why bother when you can fly, am I right? Yeah, more zipline time, more fun whistly music as we rolling along here. Yeah, so like World 8 pulls out all the stops. Do you know any Discords you know speedrun community? I know there's multiple Discords for different speed games, and there's I don't know like if there's like a big universal speedrun Discord. So interestingly, in this stage, we took that zip line to get, like, there was the first toad at the beginning of the zip line, there's this one after the hot air balloon. We have to go backwards a room, though, because there was a fork earlier, and the forked path one way led to where the third toad is, so we have to move backwards to that third toad. So we do that, we grab that toad. That moving platform, unfortunately, caused us a little bit of trouble. But yeah, now heading up on the end, though. That is always the quote of the day. Peach can fly, so she can fly anywhere she can as long as she has vibe. But you can see, ran out of vibe there. So I gotta walk that little last bit, unfortunately. But yeah, coming up on the last stage here, which is another doozy of a labyrinth, I'd say. It starts off with an auto-scroller that I believe moves slightly faster than other auto-scrollers, or at least with all the pits and fire bars and paratroopers everywhere, it feels scarier to the point that you might feel like you're going faster because you have, you know, less ability to kind of work at your own pace. Even though it's an auto-scroller, you're kind of forced to go through it pretty fast. But what this stage does is this auto-scroller is going to spill us out into a hub room with 4 corners. Bottom left, bottom right, and top right are all going to lead us to Toads, and top left is the exit. So we have to visit all 4 corners. And I usually start off with the bottom left, just because there's that platform there just kind of begging you to go this way. So in we go, and we start off with this room with some slopes that we can try to get some speed off of, but you got to watch out for those claw hands. If they grab you, you get stunned and you're stuck for a little bit. And as you can see, I've dodged them so far. But this last one, I tried to spawn them high and then go low, but the bat basically bounced me up into them. And now we got another long gauntlet of torches, and there'll be thwomps coming up, I believe. It's just a lot of exciting chaos, and that's what this whole stage is. Like this stage throws everything it can at you, which I will say, though it's doing all that, I would say comparatively speaking, yes, this is harder than earlier stages we've seen, but once you beat the game, you actually are able to unlock 3 bonus stages per world, and those stages actually get legitimately difficult. There are places that you have to like run really quick without falling through death pits. You have to like manipulate a trampoline to fall down to you. A couple new enemies show up, like angry bullet bills that move really fast, and like the way that like you can tell the stages are designed more for difficulty than they are for aesthetic. But also in this blue torch room, there's multiple places where the blue flames spawn. I bring one from the left side over to the right side, and then for the rest of them I now spawn them on the right side to get these guys. But like the way they look to me, those bonus stages, sort of feel almost like Mario Maker-esque in their aesthetic, because they just kind of feel like we want you to have like a challenge platforming, but we're not going to necessarily take the time to make it look pretty. We'll make it look certainly more than passable, but not like what you would consider probably a standard stage design, I would say. I don't know. Another thwomp face here. This is another one of those that if you're quick enough and you don't get caught on walls, if you gloom fast enough here, you can get up to the pipe and avoid having to stop a second time. Unfortunately, I did have to stop there. You saw, and the thwomp did a quick inspection, but I made it. Do you even know the fastest? This is the for this game, I hold the world record, Might Fox. Admittedly, few people run this game, and I'm the only one that's done runs recently, and I've gotten to the point, like, there were other times where other runners had a world record, but I kept going at it and took it back. So my PB, which you can see the timer on my split, says 2:12:56 on my 8.6. That is the world record time. So you can see it. This run, which for the most part was pretty solid, but then had those 2 really glaring mistakes in World 8. One where I got eaten by the thwomp face, and one where I got hit by the cannon and got knocked back and had to get more vibe. Besides those 2, I was like more or less kind of close to PB, and actually gets a little bit worse here. I run out of vibe. And you saw I was trying to, like, for the most part, if you start to fall down a death pit and you turn on your joy vibe, you're able to save yourself. Unfortunately, I was in such a bad spot that it just didn't quite work out. I believe my current PB does not have that solid of a World 8-5 here, so it's not as costly to screw up, but in general, I'd rather have a good run overall, not, oh, this stage was okay because I saved time even though I played bad, you know? So that was the third toad in this stage, so now we get to go to the top left corner. And then we're coming up on... this is an interesting little puzzle room here. There's a bunch of pipes, and only one of them progresses you forward. Well, lucky for me, it never changes. I know it's this pipe every time, so I just go in here, and I'm done. You've never played Kirby's Adventure before? And you're trying to speedrun it? Interesting. Hope that... like, good luck. So with 8-5 done, it's time for 8-6, and this has probably got some of the coolest things we do. It's got a little cutscene skip kind of thing. Real quick, we're swiping boos. I think the boo touchscreen game came and went in World 4, but all I'm doing is like wiping the boos away. Oh, not speedrunning, just playing the game in general. Gotcha, Mike Fox. I'm sorry. But yeah, so it's really unclear. Like some people think just to tap the boos, but you actually just keep kind of not scratching, like damaging the touchscreen, but like swiping your stylus across the boos to make them go away. But yeah, there's 3 phases, or like 3 bosses we're about to fight for this finale. And really, it's... in some ways, this first one against the Angry Hammer Bro can be the toughest, because you can lose time to this. Basically, you see these... there's these Hammer Bros. If you ever, like, defeat too many, or, like, you wait too long, the Hammer Bro will sort of do a summoning spell to bring some back. But the game sort of pans the camera over to the Hammer Bro, freezes, and shows him doing that. It's like a little, basically a cutscene of a summoning attack. But if you catch the Hammer Bro as he's hopping around, he won't have a chance to do that summoning. And so basically you skip an entire cutscene. It's not that long, but it's still a little skip that it's worth trying to get. Second phase here is Bowser. And the deal with him, you can either like hit him in the face with parry, or you can just use rage. If you hit him in the face, I believe if you hit him in the face with, it takes twice as many hits, but with every like hit in his health bar, you need to hit him twice. And you need to be careful to A, not take a lot of damage, which you can surprisingly take a lot of damage really fast in this fight, and B, not run out of vibe. And like, you see I'm like taking a lot of damage. I'm already down to 3 health. But you're able to damage him, like with each phase he goes into another vibe. But you can actually sneak a hit in every single time before he turns on the vibe. But you see now I'm low on health, my vibe meter's almost gone, so I'm really in a tight spot, so I need to be really careful. So I'm about to die. I get that hit here, and to play it, I get the hit there. I did a little, I can't tell if I tried to heal there or not. But actually, I did heal a little bit, but now I'm just trying to avoid taking damage, and I get that last hit in with almost no vibe left, and I had a little bit of health back, because if not, I would have had to fight all the bosses all over again, or at least for this phase. Okay. Final Bowser fight. I've mentioned you, like, and basically you're supposed to throw bob-bombs in his face, but instead of doing that, we use the scoop attack, like, basically press the button that usually picks up enemies, and hit Bowser in the eye with it. And you do that 5 times, and Bowser's dead. So, what's supposed to be probably like a minutes-long boss fight where you have to wait for a bunch of attacks and like summoning bob-bombs and stuff, you can complete in a matter of seconds. I cannot fully admit to finding that. I ran into some website or something, I don't know. There was a... like, people have, like, little tutorials, FAQs, questions, like, or websites where they're like, I can't get past this boss fight or whatever. There was one where someone posted a thing like, I can't beat Final Bowser. I keep getting him down to 1 health by flying up to him and hitting him in the face, but I can't kill him. And my first thought is, what are you talking about? You use bob-bombs to kill Bowser. what is this hitting him in the face thing, so I messed around and saw, oh shoot, you can damage him way faster. So shout outs to that little website question thing to kind of push me in the right direction to finding that. Yeah. Well, this is a speed run, Frostvirus, so yeah, we're gonna try to hit him fast. So we're not gonna do it the intended route. Speedruns are all about finding unintended things, right? So yeah, I believe what it has to do with, I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, there are enemies that you can't scoop and pick up. So if you ever try to scoop them, instead of like picking them up and holding them over your head, they get damaged, which in the case of minor enemies equates to them being hit and just despawning or, you know, going away, falling off the game. In the case of bosses, though, because they're not scoopable, I guess they're registered to take damage, but taking damage to a boss is one thing of health. So we're able to just cheese the final Bowser fight by taking advantage of that scoop exploitation. Well, Frost, real quick, I'm not playing right now. This was a recording, and I was just talking over it. Because if I was doing a run, I might have been a little distracted, or I would have wanted to keep resetting. So I just got a good run off stream, and then now I'm streaming on top of it. Or I'm commentating on top of it. And yes, Pickle, you are right. Some people are like, I can't beat Bowser, but a lot of people that play this game casually are like, I can't get to Bowser because they don't know they need all the toads. Well, honestly, the people don't say I can't get to Bowser because the game does tell them. The game does tell you once you get through all the stages, to beat Bowser, you need to get all the toads. So you find that out, just not until the end. I didn't lie to you. What is my stream title? Give me a second here. Oh, I guess it just says commentating an SPP any percent run, not commentating over. Sorry, my bad. That's on me, you're right. I've betrayed you all. I apologize. Well, these things happen. But yeah, so that is Super Princess Peach any percent. Only a minute behind PB with some of those big mistakes. So you can see this game can still be optimized. It's a fun speed game. A little lengthy, but I think it's worth the time invested in it. Like, the runs are always enjoyable to me. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed. And hope this commentary was solid enough.